An entire continent under the Chinese regime's sway. Beijing has been pouring billions of dollars into the infrastructure of Africa. But what started out as a seemingly generous move has dark strings attached. Now that influence is rippling out globally. In this special report, we look at China's growing influence in Africa, how it got to this point, and the impact it's having on the rest of the world. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Tendrils of Chinese influence have been spreading in every corner of the world. But the regime seems to have sunk its hooks in deeper in one region than in others. That is the entire continent of Africa.
You're going to wind up with China controlling seaports in Africa. They're going to control airports. I mean, they already have a military base in Djibouti. Maybe they'll be building other bases.
China is the biggest lender to Africa, having loaned over $148 billion to countries there since 2018. But with those loans come risks.
These are some of the most impoverished countries in the world that also have some of the largest debt. And so you have a poor country, and then they're in debt. They're in debt to China. They owe them a lot of money. Plus, we're all coming out of this 2 years of COVID economy. So these countries are really in danger of default. A number of them are actually in danger of default. Several of them are threatened with default.
That's Antonio Graceffo, China economic analyst. Now, what happens if these countries can't pay back the Chinese loans to the point that they default?
In cases where foreign analysts have looked at the contracts, they said, well, this contract clearly says that if country X in Africa defaults on their loans, China gets to take their seaport or their airport or their, cobalt mines or something. And China apparently always says, well, no, you see, you misunderstand the contract. Everyone misunderstands the contract, everyone except China.
How did these countries get to this point? First, let's look at why there's all this misunderstanding surrounding the contracts.
China keeps most of the contracts relatively secret. It's one of the big criticisms of China and the lending on the Belt and Road Initiative is that it's all secret and it's opaque and nobody knows what the terms of the contracts are.
Secondly, the countries signing onto these deals are often already indebted to the point that world banks and other countries would never lend to them.
Because these other organizations have a conscience, and they'll actually say, listen, country X or Y, you're already heavily in debt, and if we loan you more money, we're going to be putting debt on top of debt, and it's going to overburden you, and it could crash out your economy and do all kinds of horrible things. Your currency can collapse, and this and that. And so they won't lend to them, basically out of conscience.
But one such country seemingly unburdened by these scruples is the Chinese regime.
China shows up, they go, the West rejected you, I'm your friend, I'll loan you this money.
But is the Chinese regime really here as a magnanimous benefactor?
All these China loans are basically China's loaning them money to build infrastructure which will allegedly generate revenue. And that revenue will be enough to pay back the loans. Well, if you're building a highway or you're building an airport or you're building a seaport, until it's completed, it doesn't generate any revenue.
And under the promise of future profits, the payments begin immediately.
But it may take years to build this airport or whatever it is, so it doesn't generate any revenue. So now the country is on the hook and they have to make these payments.
But that's not all.
And the other just predatory, horrible thing about these China loans is that they will loan the money to country X to build an airport. They will then send construction crews and engineers from China and immediately take the money back as a payment for this construction. But now the country owes the money, the principal, to China, right? They paid it out to a Chinese company. China's effectively already recouped all the money. And now this country has to begin making interest payments, and they don't have cash to make interest payments. And we know this because they borrowed money from China. And why did they borrow money from China? Because they don't have money. So now suddenly they're faced with these interest payments that they can't pay.
What options are these countries left with?
When these countries are in danger of default, They will then go to the UN, they'll go to the ADB, they'll go to, the traditional lenders, and they'll say, listen, we're in danger of default. You got to help us. You have to loan us money. So now what you're basically going to wind up with is Western institutions giving money to these countries so that they could immediately turn around and give the money to the CCP.
The Chinese regime has found a way to rake in money from multiple fronts. But it's not just the economic side.
For example, they need raw materials. So they go to countries that are rich in raw materials, nickel, cobalt, things like that in Africa. And the problem with the countries that are rich in raw materials is that they are generally of lower development, the countries at a lower developmental level, they don't have their own technology for extracting the minerals from the earth. So they make a deal with China.
But what does this deal entail?
China says, well, we're going to buy your minerals. This is great. We're going to pay you billions of dollars for your minerals, and the country's very happy. They're going to make billions of dollars. But of course, the country's not really capable of extracting it themselves.
And where do these countries get the equipment needed to extract the minerals? China.
China then sends a state-owned or state-controlled or state-affiliated mining company. And they get the contract from the local government, and they'll say to the local government, listen, we'll loan you this money, we're gonna buy your cobalt, but you're gonna agree to have our company come there and extract it. And actually, if you don't agree, there's no way to get it out of the ground, so you have to agree.
And this isn't an isolated example.
Some of these countries in Africa, 70 to 80% of the mining sector is controlled by China. So they've already loaned the money, then they have their own company there running the mines, and then allegedly they're paying the country for the ore that's being taken out of the ground.
But raw materials themselves don't usually generate a profit. Let's look at steel.
Yes, steel's a raw material, but it is not an earth mineral. The actual earth mineral is iron. Right? So steel is already refined. Steel has already been to a developed country like Canada or Germany or the United States where it's been refined into steel, right? What comes out of the earth is iron ore. The iron ore necessary to build one Toyota automobile cost less than $200.
Going back to these African countries,
basically what you wind up with is the country just becomes a machine, a Chinese machine of extracting minerals out of the earth. The minerals go to China, the money goes to China, and the country somehow is still in debt to China and can never get out of it.
Part of the imbalance stems from the nature of processing raw materials.
Let's say that a benevolent country, appeared on the earth and they said, we're going to just give you the money to make your own mines, and you could extract the cobalt and we'll buy it at the fair market value, and you don't owe us any money. You're still talking about taking $200 worth of iron out of the earth and making an $18,000 automobile.
Resource-rich countries are stuck in a situation that's hard to scramble out of.
To make more money, they'd have to be able to, process and make the steel. And then ultimately, you don't want to just process and make the steel. You want to be able to make the finished products because those are so much more valuable.
But it's not just raw materials that hold value for Beijing. The Chinese regime has found other ways to seep into countries across Africa. Let's turn to the skies for a look at telecommunications. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here, after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. The Chinese regime has found unusual ways to seep into the countries of Africa. We look at how Beijing uses Huawei to track people on the continent, even with their phones turned off, and how Beijing has weaponized diplomacy. Our full episode can be watched on our partner platform, Opaque TV. To sign up for a free 14-day trial, please click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you tomorrow.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
The performance was enchanting.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
It touches you. It really does.
The expertise of the dancers was really, really strong.
To know that it was live music was really fantastic.
We didn't want to miss this.
Make sure you see it.
Have to come. Life-changing.